Hello, dear friends. Here we are, Kardec Radio. Welcome, everyone. Can you believe it? We are here in Brazil. Yes. Where? In Belo Horizonte, Minas Gerais, the state of Minas Gerais, where Chico Xavier was born. And we're delighted because we were upgraded with our beautiful team from the behind the scenes, Marco Gandra, Silvana, who prepared a beautiful setting here at the very studios of Portal Saber. This is a beautiful project that started years ago, of course in Portuguese, but many of the members and the founders of this team of Portal Saber have been involved in the English speaking dissemination of Spiritism for quite a while. So we are here with Geraldo Lemos Netto, our dear Geraldinho. Welcome and thank you for having us here.
Hello, Vanessa. Very nice to have you with us, and we are glad that we can do this together.
Thank you. We are honored that Geraldo Lemos Netto has allowed us to record in these very studios. Thank you so much, Geraldo. Once again, thank you.
It's our home.
And we, believe it or not, you now, finally, we bring Luis Sergio Marotta here, almost live, here at Kardec Radio. Luis Sergio Marotta has been working for the last 6 years on bringing to Kardec Radio and its audience the teachings of the Gospel according to Spiritism to the world. Thank you so much, Luis Sergio, for all the work and for being here with us.
Thank you, Vanessa, because the opportunity came from you, and I'm delighted to be here with you in Brazil, right? And it's been a great experience. Of course, lots of effort because, this daily routine of recording and doing things requires from us persistence. But it's so good to work in the field that I think it's still not very well explored. That is the gospel according to Spiritism and the spiritualist teachings that come from the spirits. I think it's a challenge because the people, when they think about the English-speaking countries, when they think about the gospel, they usually come to the idea of bigotry, dogmatism, and sectarism, things like that. So it's a good effort, and Kardec is the one who's going to help us to do that.
Yes.
Over to you.
You're right. And you're talking about the frontier in our studies in Spiritism. And today we had an opportunity, time and again, to visit the city of Chico Xavier, Pedro Leopoldo. And walking in the very streets, visiting some of the first centers of that was founded with the help of Chico Xavier. He brings to us the simplicity. And many people tell us, but we need to be simple. I agree. But now the internet is our simplest way of sharing these teachings because the world can no longer wait for this. We cannot expect that people are going to travel to Pedro Leopoldo to feel the feelings. So we're here to share these feelings with them and to share and encourage all of you, not only to know of Spiritism, but as Jesus said to Nicodemus once, as reported in the book Good News by Brother X through Chico Xavier, it's not enough to know it. We need to feel it. So we're feeling here because there's a lot of friendship here, a lot of, mutual appreciation and cooperation. And I'd like to ask Luis Sergio to share with us a message that you said that goes hand in hand with our effort here today.
First and foremost, I was caught by surprise because I thought it was going to be in Portuguese, right? Portuguese. I won't be able to translate it immediately now. But cutting a long story short, Allan Kardec, he passed away at the beginning of 1869, March, according to our files here.
31st.
And the 31st of March in 1869. And he soon sent a message through the mediumship of in a seance at Anna Blackwell's house. This was in Paris on the 4th of October 1869. And in this message, Allan Kardec was speaking about he was speaking about his desire of having the American and the French schools of spiritualism and spiritism get together.
Wonderful.
And exchange ideas. Because he came to the conclusion, he confirmed after he passed away that on the other side of life, people who were born French still kept being French. And people who were born American still kept being American or English. And the differences went on the other side of life. And he said that the simplest action of sitting around the table to talk about spiritualism and spiritism, which is almost the same thing, because I've been talking to spiritualist people nowadays, and I see that there is a catch. There is something that's very common between spiritists and spiritualists. Not Brazilian spiritualists. English-speaking spiritualists deal and work with mediumship, which Brazilian spiritualists don't usually.
Mm-hmm.
And this is something. And Allan Kardec knew about that, so much so that once he wrote in the Spiritist Review, a magazine, he said, well, in the United States, what we call here Spiritism, they call it spiritualism.
Mm-hmm.
So there is something, there's a lot in common.
Mm-hmm.
And he said, the simple action of sitting around the table to talk could lessen lots of differences that we have between us.
Mm-hmm.
And that's why I think this kind of work that Vanessa and Salon has been doing, spreading the word in English, it's so important, and it's so important to us, Brazilian people, because we set up a culture in Spiritism, but every culture interferes with the sheer pure idea. You understand? So, as Allan Kardec said, there won't be any Spiritist center that will be exactly the same as the other because of the nationality, because of the culture that is established in that country. No Spiritist center will be the same. Mm-hmm. But when we talk about getting together and spreading the word universally, we'll have to be very careful and understand the cultural differences. And one of the things that help us a lot nowadays is the internet, right? To pave our pathway towards fraternity, and the language.
The language, yes, for sure. As you're saying this, it reminds me of several things. One, for example, of one of the most recent events. Through Kardec Radio, we started a community. It's been 3 years that we do daily programs for reasons that are related to the last elections in the United States, because the experimenter said, we need to really go live every day to keep up the optimism and helping creating this current of hope that we are marching forward in spite of the news. And then through this work, friends from around the world have been gathering together, including friends from South Africa. I'm going to give an example of the extreme of it all. South Africa, with Rihanna Williams and her family. They've been in touch with us, and 2 years ago, we've done like a book drive of English-speaking written books of Spiritism, and several listeners from around the world contributed. More than 300 books were shipped to South Africa, where there is no group. They started it all in English. And we have the pictures. Everything is published and recorded not only at Kardec Radio, but also in the Spiritist magazine. And soon after, this happened in the beginning of October of 17, and from there on, Rihanna, Felicia, her daughter, who is still a teenager pretty much, they started doing works there, teaching people. And then Rihanna took another step. She started translating on Facebook Live the English written books in Spiritism to the Afrikaans language.
The Afrikaner.
Exactly. And it's there. If it were not for the English, it wouldn't. Yeah. So it's there. She created a group, Spiritism SA Spiritism. It's there.
Wow.
And they have been doing the works, even for children in the area. And for it's much harder for them than for us. And the other things about spiritualism, we've been in touch with the spiritualists in the United States since 2004. And then in 2006, we had a gathering. Last year, we had another spiritist weekend that they offered for us there. And it was great, the exchange. But, you know, the thing that really creates an obstacle for us is the conflict of interest in terms of
money and ego.
Yeah, money and ego. No matter how hard it is for them, it's hard to let go. I remember and this is public and people have to know. Unfortunately, it's true. We made sure that our sessions were not charged. We didn't want any money for ourselves. Any of us in the program.
And this is so important for Spiritism.
So important, right? Hello, Geraldo.
That's very important. We cannot choose this pathway of charging for our congresses and gathering, because that's not the inspiring thing that comes from Jesus, from Allan Kardec, and from Chico Xavier's work.
Exactly. And we had they asked us to bring a painter, a mediumistic painter, and Maria Gertrudis from Ituiutaba, Minas Gerais, she came along. It was actually her second time. And we said, you know, okay, do what you have to do. And she did. And the session was open to the public. Believe it or not, people wanted to buy the paintings, which at the end of the day served the purpose to send the money to her foundation. Nothing for her. And yet,
it's a charity foundation.
Charity.
In this case.
Though it was not an imposition. She said they can take it, but you know how you're going to select who is going to take. There were 100+ people there. Another session of about healing. There was like a talk of an hour and a half, an hour, and the other hour was about almost like fraternal assistance with the medium Ricardo Melo, who is from the area, right? I think he's from Belo Horizonte. And he was there, and the condition was like, do not charge anybody who goes to the session. So it's like everybody could go inside this room
free of charge.
Free of charge. And then at some point, one of the spiritualist directors comes to me and says, we're going to pass the hat asking for donation. I said, but you can't.
No.
But they did anyhow. At the very end, when everything ended, she came to me and said, Vanessa, we got an envelope, but she didn't show it to me. She said, we've got an envelope full of money.
Wow.
What do you want to do? I turned to Ricardo, who knows English very well. I said, Ricardo, it's up to you. It's not up to me. And he said, well, ask her to give it to donation, to a foundation or to a charitable organization. And then she turned to me and said, oh, we're going to give it to the Healing Temple. And I said, why the Healing Temple? Oh, because our mediums, they do the healing work, which is the passes for us, free of charge. Well, but that's not what we're talking about. Oh, so then let's give it to the pet cemetery. I mean, but why do they need the money for the pet cemetery?
Pet cemetery.
And then Ricardo and I looked at each other and said, you know, do what you got to do. And then we said, you know, it's up to you. But what shocked me, and I have to say this, we want to make friends, but at the same, it's so
different.
It's so way different that it's shocking to us. It's so non-spiritist ethical.
Yes, the point is I have been talking to these people too, the spiritualist guys, and that's the point. They at the beginning they started looking at Kardec's works. That's something that we've been trying to make happen. You too, for the last about 18 years, 20 years. Recently, I was interviewed by a group of them. Some of them don't charge, they say. They don't charge. And one of them, the leader of the group, I like this person very much. Her name is Wendy Zamet. And she said, Luis Sergio, we are very interested in getting to know about Spiritism. Mostly now that spiritualists are starting to accept the idea of reincarnation, which is a great step forward to Spiritism. And I remember Allan Kardec said that he asked the spirits why in some countries reincarnation was not taught through mediumship. And the spirits explained to him that this framework of Spiritism with incarnation or reincarnation together was only taught in France because of freedom of thought. And the spirits respect this a lot. But in the other countries, in the future, they would accept. And they are starting accepting this. So it's wonderful, isn't it? And Allan Kardec says, oh, why? Why in some countries, why don't we have these things taught, mediumistically speaking, in some countries? I said, because it's something pedagogical, right? Educational. We cannot, if we put reincarnation, if we had put reincarnation as a frontal goal, they wouldn't accept anything that came together. So we offered something before, and in the future, reincarnation will be accepted. And this is the future. They started accepting reincarnation now, which is another point, common point for them to access Kardec's work.
That's very important what he said, because I remember talking to Chico Xavier one time, and I asked him if Allan Kardec had eventually failed his commitment with Jesus to bring us the Spiritist doctrine, what would be happening to the world? And Chico Xavier told me that at the same time Allan Kardec was reincarnated in France, some other 53 spirits had already at the same time reincarnated all over the world for the same purpose, to help him or even to take the work ahead. And one of them was the American Andrew Jackson Davis, that also wrote 5 books like Allan Kardec did. And they are very similar to the work of Allan Kardec. But Chico Xavier told me that in America, he failed because he conceded the pressure from the pastors, from the Protestant church, that initially had accepted the spiritualism and the movement of mediumship and everything, but they pressured him to take out from his work the reincarnation. And so he failed. And so that Allan Kardec was the one chosen by the higher spirits to proceed with the revelations from the higher spirits.
Yeah, it's clear because, as Arthur Conan Doyle says in the book A History of Spiritualism, when he titles the second volume, one of the chapters, French Spiritualism, and he talks about Kardec, he talks about the fact that reincarnation is put aside, and he says, well, because of the cultural aspects of England and the relationship with the colony in India, and they were like, outraged, thinking about, oh my gosh, we're going to reincarnate us, and they were like, no, dismissing it all, plus the fact that we don't charge. So they were persecuted in the United States and had to make it a religion. Spiritualism in the United States is considered a religion to protect themselves from persecution, and they made some positions a profession. In Spiritism, we didn't do this. We kept it like very natural and sacred, to the point that we wouldn't create like dogmatic positions, etc. And one of our friends, Tom Kratzley from Lilydale, he says, he's one of the scholars in Andrew Jackson Davis. He says, the main problem we have in spiritualism, unlike you spiritists, is because we do not study. They don't study. They simply treat mediumship, and we say this, it's like peanut meeting. It's a peanut meeting because,
like phenomena.
Yeah. They're seated like at their living
Social
room, and literally there was a meeting, no preparation. Like one day they invited me, like, oh Vanessa, let's go sit down here at my living room, and we're talking, eating peanuts. Let's do a meeting.
Doing this at
Peanuts still.
Have you ever heard of the Leslie
Right
Flint? Vanessa, have you ever heard of Leslie Flint?
Leslie Flint.
Yes, the guy was one of the greatest materializations medium in England. He once received through the trumpet, right? The direct voice.
Yeah.
He received a message from a guy called Mickey, who was his kind of a mentor. And Mickey said, I am so sorry, but we failed in terms of the spiritualist movement.
Yep.
Yeah, he said, we failed because we couldn't convey the idea of higher teachings to the people.
Yep.
So we forgot about the teachings.
Yes.
But let me tell you something. I am worried about us here too, because people, I think we're going the same way, because
Why?
people are not studying Spiritism.
Okay,
right?
So
young people, for example, that in the past usually studied. Now it's very difficult
like
to make.
In our time.
Yes.
But Luis Sergio, what I see nowadays is that people are, many people, they tell me, I listen to talks, but are you reading the books and studying? No, I'm listening to talks.
Yes.
It's valid. We have Kardec Radio, we have the Spiritist magazine.
But you have to study that.
But we don't do this to dismiss your effort. You need to do it on your own. And now because of the movies, people watch No Solar and they want to sit down in a book discussion of the book No Solar. I mean, it's like
nothing to do.
Miles of distance, because the movie does not substitute the book.
The original work.
Yeah.
The movement is expanding, but the more it seems that the more is expanding, the less people are. It's very, very difficult. Because once I was in a lecture, the guy is a Protestant pastor, a famous Protestant pastor in Brazil. Livia, my wife, was with me, and he said, people, our movement is going down the pipes because it's growing too fast, but people are not getting to know what evangelism really is. And now you can see so many problems, so many. Yes. So this is a phenomenon, I think, of our time. Yes. People don't just get in touch with the teachings of anything. They just go and just like a church and And I don't know what's going to happen. That's why we're doing this. To keep it recorded.
It's very important that we have the conscience that we need in our spiritist homes or centers or groups, that we need to perceive or to establish spiritist study groups.
Study groups.
That's it. Not only gospel at home.
At the work
Not only gospel in the home.
No.
Yeah, because it's a phenomenon.
From Allan Kardec, from Chico Xavier, from Emmanuel, from André Luiz. That's very important.
Mm-hmm.
And it's urgent to do this.
To study the books.
Study.
And
Groups of study, and that's a must.
And the other thing is, since we're talking about this, and before we go back to the gospel, we want to talk more about the importance of studying the gospels according to Spiritism, and it's how current it is, the teachings and everything. But I want to touch, since you're talking about studying, Geraldo, I remember when I came here in 2013 and you presented a letter. We were so deeply moved. A letter that was written by Chico Xavier.
In English.
In English to one of your family members.
Yeah, my great aunt, Nair Machado Pascoal. She lived in São Paulo. She was one of Chico Xavier peoples at the school when they were young in Pedro Leopoldo. And all of her family was Spiritists and study and practice Spiritism in Brazil in different cities. And in 1965, Chico Xavier went to America for the first time. He and Valdo Vieira went in the trip to promote Spiritism, and they had this couple, the Haddad family from Elon College, when they founded the first Spiritist group in the United States in around this time, 1965, and they received both Chico Xavier and Valdo Vieira letters in English that were published in 1966. It was launched in New York in 17th of May 1966, and then he sent to my great aunt Nair this book with the dedicatoria, how to say.
Yeah, oh man, I forgot the name.
Yeah, and also a beautiful letter with 2 pages written in English, perfect English. Where he told, and there was a curiosity about this, because my grand aunt didn't speak English.
Oh wow!
So she was very moved, because why Chico Xavier is written me in English, but she could feel the sentiment that Chico put in this letter, and of course someone translated it to her, and after a while she gave it to me. I knew English, so she gave it to me and told me maybe Chico meant to send to you, because in this particular letter he tells us that he was studying English by the works, or by the asking of the spirits, because they told him in America in 1965 and in 1966 that in some time in the future there will be very important to transmit the Spiritist doctrine in English to the world.
It's interesting you're saying, so people who are watching us, you can go to the Spiritist Magazine website, spiritistmagazine.org, or the app of the Spiritist Magazine, and read issue 21, and you're going to see the letter on the front cover, and you can read it all within it. And we're talking about this because, as Luis Sergio is reminding us about studying Spiritism, and you reinforcing it and bringing about Chico Xavier's involvement, his own efforts to make it happen in the English-speaking language. Nowadays, almost at the end of the second decade of the 21st century, we're still stumbling justifying. I know people who tell me, but our center has meetings in English and in Spanish and in Portuguese. Wow. Why do you have to do 10,000 languages if you're in a country that speaks English, period? Period. But we have people who speak many other languages. But everywhere you go, at least as far as I know, everywhere you go, everything is in English. What if you were in Brazil and people were speaking in Chinese? Well, just because we have a Chinese community, we want to do the meeting in Chinese. How beautiful is this? Beautiful. But when you make it public, there is a different level of commitment. I remember when the meetings were in my house in Portuguese, I had no intention whatsoever to make it a public meeting. But when I realized that it became public and people asked us to go for the talks, I said, how can I advertise Portuguese spoken talks in the United States?
Which is an English-speaking country.
How am I going to explain to people if they see flyers in Portuguese what that means? So that doesn't make any sense. We respect, but we're still thinking, if Spiritism is all about reasoning, where is the reasoning behind it? What's the rationale behind it?
And there's another point. It's pedagogical project, it's a pedagogical project. People sometimes don't understand this, that the objective is to spread the word all over the world. So, in order to spread the word, you need to be a teacher. Jesus Christ was the greatest master. And Allan Kardec, for me, at least for us, I think, was the professor. And as a professor, as a teacher, we have to worry about humanity. Humanity wants to know. That's why sometimes I usually say that the Spiritist doctrine is based on the phenomena. And sometimes people say, but the phenomena is past. No. Okay, I understand. We can come to the truth by reasoning. Philosophy can bring us the truth. But this is not the objective of Spiritism. The aim of Spiritism is to make people know about these things. And for them to know, it's very good to know that your philosophy is endorsed by experimental science. It's wonderful, because it will bring some evidence, and it will bring a conviction that will be unable to be destroyed.
But in this case, Luis Sergio, it's not only about proving, it's about the therapy behind it. Our mediumistic meetings are about the healing of the immortal,
which is also
spirit.
But this is also when the spiritualists come. Right? Sergio, but in Brazil, for example, you don't deal with verifiable mediumship. It's like we do. It's a therapeutic mediumship, but we can verify the results immediately sometimes. Exactly. So it's also many times. So it's also verifiable. Yeah. It's not maybe immediately verifiable, but it's verifiable, right? But what I'm telling you is that there is a process, a pedagogical process that we need to follow. And when you need to have to grab any kind of resources like the English language, which is a great resource nowadays we have in hand, to spread the word. And it's urgent.
Exactly.
You see, because people need clarifying things. I read this message here because Allan Kardec, the spirit, Allan Kardec, was very glad to see people around the table trying to exchange information. This information Vanessa is exchanging with us about spiritualist people charging in the United States. We need to get together, sit down and say why and why not. Why does Allan Kardec, why? And that comes to the gospel, for example. I remember Jesus Christ saying, exactly at the time when he distributed the gifts among the apostles, right? You're going to raise the dead, you're going to heal the sick. And he said, freely give what freely was given to you.
Yeah, that's very important.
Why is that? Because this kind of knowledge is not human. So you cannot place obstacles between these forces and humanity that is desperately in need of it. If we do this, we are, getting in trouble. And this is something that people need to know. They need to know,
Mm-hmm.
I'd like to comment in one point.
Mm-hmm.
Chico Xavier received also a book from a Spiritist.
Yeah, Esperanto.
The Esperanto. And at that time, it was from the spirit of Lawrence.
Mm.
And he was a great Spiritist. And at that time, they were saying that Esperanto would be the universal language in the future, and in the 80s, like late 80s, I asked Chico Xavier, is that still valid?
Yeah.
And Chico Xavier, he was very,
adamant,
assertive about it. He told me, no, Geraldo, Esperanto is not going to be the universal language because the word changed, and nowadays English is the world language. Every country speaks English. If you travel, you speak English.
Okay, so if you travel and you travel, and that's good to let everybody know. Though you and Luis Sergio are living in Brazil in different ways, but you are giving your contribution to Spiritism in English. Luis Sergio has been doing this through the internet, through Kardec Radio and other means. And you, whenever you travel, if the groups are willing and open, you are always ready to do it in English, which as a scientist, for me, it's just the way we work in the world. No matter your language, when you gather together to talk about a science, if it's outside of your country, in another language, you talk it in English.
Yeah.
So it surprises me that there's so much resistance because, for example, if you see the Dalai Lama, I remember seeing him face to face at a neuroscience meeting with more than 14,000 neuroscientists in Washington, D.C. And he had a translator by his side. He started speaking in his language. Suddenly he changed in his broken English. He kept on going and going. At the end of the meeting, I asked my American neuroscientists, the friends that I had, the colleagues, what do you think? I thought it was great. No one said, what a broken English. We had Nobel Peace Prizes inside that room.
Wow.
Eric Kandel and others, big shots, who were in the room, 14,000 listening. Why? Because he was speaking in English. If Chico Xavier were alive and he were speaking in English, I have no doubt that today that meeting would have been with Chico Xavier.
Mm-hmm. That's very true.
If Divaldo Franco were speaking in English, I have no doubt that because of the current interest by many neuroscientists in studying mediumship, Divaldo Franco would be one of the scientists there, leading an opening lecture for the whole neuroscience, international neuroscientific meeting. And then when I saw Masaru Emoto in Baltimore giving a lecture, he's Japanese, he had a translator who was seated. It's an interesting way of translating because he's there standing up and speaking in front of people, and the translator is seated in front of him, but people are not seeing the translator. She only has a microphone, and we adopt it kind of when needed at our center because then people can see the person and that's less conflicting. But he knew English quite well. So sometimes he would stop and say, no. You didn't translate it well.
That's not what I was saying.
And then he kept going in English until he saw that there was a limitation. He turned back to Japanese and kept on going. And when I followed the studies of Thich Nhat Hanh, who is another Nobel Peace Prize, somebody who works on Buddhism, and I've seen how people come across in English, in spite of being broken English or in English with accent like Deepak Chopra, heavy accent, and people love them. Love them in spite of it all. And then it comes to the Brazilian Spiritists who come with all this prejudice saying, but if you, and then recently in the United States, people talking about like, if you are an American Spiritist, and I mean like deep inside, who is actually American? Can you tell? Because what if you were born in America in a past life and then in this life you're born in Brazil because you had to bring it forth? And then people, I said, don't we know about reincarnation? Who cares about nationality now? It's about coming clear. So then we're creating new obstacles for the dissemination. And the worst is when people come to us and visit us and say, how many Americans do you have in your group? And I said, I don't know, because I don't count the discarnates. It's not about the incarnates only. The majority surely are discarnated. Who cares? What I care is that we do it in English and there is no language barrier. Whomever wants to cross this door is going to come if you're welcome. And it's going to keep going. And it's
not only
right?
that. You record the teachings and put on the internet. So
it's on demand.
It's on demand. So
when you go there,
I remember in one time also, it was like middle of the 80s, and I was with Chico Xavier in his home in Uberaba, Minas Gerais, and one time he stopped and looked up and asked me, Geraldinho, could you tell me what is multimedia? And I didn't know at that time what would be multimedia. We didn't have internet at that time. We didn't have cell phones. We didn't have laptop computers. And I told Chico, I don't know, but maybe is the sum of all the media. But why are you asking me that? And he told me, because the spirits are telling me now that there will come the time that Spiritist doctrine will be disseminated. The word will be disseminated by multimedia. And I was very moved when you, in the beginning of this program, you said the most simple way is to use internet. And if you use internet, spreading the word, the knowledge of Spiritist doctrine, the higher spirits that wrote, like Emmanuel through Chico Xavier, like André Luiz through Chico Xavier, and stimulating the work groups, the study groups in each center. You are spreading the word in a simple way. You don't need to charge anyone. If the internet is free, everyone in the world can listen in English and study in English. So you can speak to the United States, to China, to Japan, to Europe, to Africa, to Latin America, and the word is there.
And you have been traveling quite a while, and you have been giving talks in the English language everywhere. Have you seen like a change, more openness,
yes.
Right?
I can see that. And I receive also lots of Messenger and WhatsApp and also Facebook, little messages. People from all over the world that can, listen to the talks, and they are thankful because of that.
Yeah.
This is very nice. We should perceive this.
Right? It's an effort, right, Geraldinho?
It's an effort.
We need to make.
But we together can do it.
Yeah.
Not one alone.
No.
Yeah.
One thing
As
I'd
a
like
team.
to
Yeah.
is that we need to approach people. I think this is my personal opinion, my experience, right? We need to approach people abroad in a way that, because they usually believe we are from a religion. So they, at the same time you are introduced, they usually build up a wall between you and them because, oh, this guy is a religion. I remember once I overheard a guy saying, only Latin Americans, something like spiritualism would become a religion, called Spiritism, right? And then I started showing them that Allan Kardec was very clear in 1868, in December, he said, the problem of the word religion is that there is two meanings for it. One meaning is philosophical, which is, of course, we have. The Spiritism has a philosophical meaning of religiousness, because religion, when you tackle the issues of afterlife thing, of course you're going to deal with behavior, consequences, free will, right? Afterlife. So this is really, in this sense, Kardec said, we are proud of announcing that Spiritism is religion, but not in the organizational, clerical, in terms of hierarchical sect and so on. That's why we, Kardec saying, we state that Spiritism is not a religion, because in this sense, it's not. And if it is, it would be something that paradoxal to us. So I explain this to people, they get a little bit surprised because they usually believe, because when they see Brazil with so many Spiritist centers, 14,000 Spiritist centers and hospitals, this is a religion. And we don't want, Luis Sergio, deal with mediumship. And mediumship is freedom. Mediumship is not a sectary thing. So this is what the argument they say. Then I have to explain that it's not the case, right? Of being one organized religion. And even I believe Jesus Christ didn't come here to found one imperial religion.
The thing is actually in the United States, spiritualism became a religion. Not in Brazil.
Everything becomes a religion, to understand that.
And that's where it is.
This is a human
It is.
problem.
It is a religion.
And in some spiritists here, I think they've become a religion.
Here,
yes.
Actually, there it's considered a religion. Official religion in the United States.
Yes,
but the reasons being for their own protection. But as you're coming to the main part of it all, since Spiritism is a science that brings back the reason of life. So, the promised consoler.
That's the point. When you said the word science, I liked it.
Yeah.
Because this is the ground where everyone can step on.
And that's where Kardec, actually. But funny enough, we are living at a time in the United States where science is being discredited, thanks to the new government and spread out ignorance. Science is experiencing a huge discredit, to the point that people are doubting climate change, which is scientifically evolution. So it's really, really interesting that we're coming at this very time to the dissemination of Spiritism in the United States. It's spreading out while many things in science, in material science, are being discredited or being challenged by the very people. But then we come to the reason why Spiritism came to life. To say what Jesus couldn't have said.
That's it.
And Promise Consoler. And then we come at Kardec Radio with the teachings of the Gospel according to Spiritism in ways that people have never heard before. Right, Luis Sergio?
That's it.
So let us talk about your approach to the Gospel of Jesus at Kardec Radio under the light of Spiritism.
My approach is very much into this kind of worry, of showing that Jesus came to teach us the science of love, first. And second, as Allan Kardec says in the Gospel according to Spiritism, spirituality that he couldn't really teach. He could speak about spirituality to Peter, John, and there's another one. He couldn't speak.
James.
James, yes. In English is James. So So he could speak about spirituality to 3 guys, and he forbade him then to speak to the others about spirituality. Because it really, psychologically, people were not ready. But science, right, grew. Right? We've had the Enlightenment we had the Enlightenment in the 1800s and 1700s. So now we are prepared to get to know about those things.
Mm-hmm.
And that's the Spiritism, to bring us the explanation of the gospel. And why the gospel, Luis Sergio? Because I sometimes talk to people and say, every house has a boss, has a father, someone who rules the room, the street, the city, the country. Why can't we have a moral boss? Why can't Jesus be the one? Right? Because Jesus is the Omega, the Alpha and the Omega. For example, he has an Occidental, a Western attitude when he goes and heals and preaches, but he also meditates and prays. He doesn't do only one thing. He's perfect. Mm-hmm. So, in many ways, if you research...
So the higher spirits told Allan Kardec that he would be
the model. Allan Kardec was open-minded to receive that kind of piece of news. And people are not, because when we talk about Christianity, people come with all the tradition that came from the Roman Empire and things like that. So I usually say, look, when in Spiritism we talk about the gospel, we talk about the essence of Christic teachings, which is at the end of the day, unconditional love.
Yes, that's
learning this through the teachings of the spirits, which becomes easier for us to understand.
That's the universal religion of wisdom and good.
Yes.
Though we need to say this, Spiritism is at the vanguard of it all, because we now understand Jesus in a completely different way, unlike Christian traditions, we would say. Plus, the ones that are non-Christian don't understand it either. So we have this task to present this Jesus that is out of the cross, the Jesus that is not a sectarian, the true one that loves everyone unconditionally, etc. And it's funny because when I go talk to people who are spiritualists, I remember how many times they said, if you come here to the Lideo, do not talk about Jesus. And Ricardo Mello was there. In his lecture, he was talking about Jesus. And I said, Ricardo, if you go there, do not talk too much. He said, Vanessa, I'm going to talk what the spirits want. I said, okay, go ahead. It's up to you. I'm just warning you, okay? I would say too, but I will say, I'm just letting you know. And then one of the directors came to me on the behind the scenes while he was giving a talk and said, he's talking too much about Jesus. I said, well, we're spiritists. We're spiritists. We can't help it. You ask us to come, we have to say it. And plus the fact that though we follow his guidance, he is not the end of it all. He's the pathway. Which when I talk to friends from the Essene Church near us, when they create the guru tradition around themselves, and recently their leader discarnated and they got lost. They said, what do we do? I said, didn't your guru tell you that God is the center of our universe? That's what I learned too. So I think Spiritism really frees us from it all, because it explains to us what nothing else can explain.
And language is a major problem, because many people start discussing about something, and the problem is the terminology. As I was talking to some spiritualists, religion to them was really organized thing only. They couldn't have this kind of philosophical idea of religion.
Yeah.
It was difficult for me to understand. No, but Serge, we don't like religion, and you're talking religion. And then one medium said, let me tell you something. It doesn't matter religion, it doesn't matter a group. What matters, if you live your life as best as you can, say, stop it. When you say live your life as best as you can, for me this is religion. Exactly. You're talking about ethical, moral teachings.
Exactly.
And that's what comes through Spiritism.
Yeah.
So we're talking about the same thing.
Same thing.
But the problem is we want to build
Words.
walls.
Yeah. I
It's
agree.
very funny. Language is a major problem in this
Major.
situation. It's
Exactly.
very funny. And we need to start to break this ice and the obstacles of language, of this dictionary. And now we can stop doing this kind of thing, right?
Allan Kardec is the teacher. So as we wrap up, and okay, all right,
Good. A solution.
all right. So as we come to a close at our program, we know if you have any questions, write to us. We'll pass it on to Geraldo and Luis Sergio and other friends. But what would be your final message for our listeners and the audience at Kardec Radio, the viewers, in this effort of disseminating these teachings without any language barrier, Geraldo?
Well, I would remember the sayings of Chico Xavier that one time he told me that the Spiritist doctrine is Jesus again to the heart of the people. And it's a philosophical way of life and also a science of understanding the other worlds, the afterlife, the mediumship, the communication that exists between the spirits all over the universe with us, and that we must be at the pathway of love, teached by Jesus Christ. And that's the religion part of Spiritist doctrine.
Thank you, Geraldo. And how about you, Luis Sergio? What would you like to say?
Paraphrasing Allan Kardec here. Well, we need to learn to love, and in order to talk about everything. Because we need to talk about many things. Many things must be clarified in our conversations. But if we are full of hard feelings and resentment and that come sometimes from the past, our past experiences in religion and philosophy and so on. We need to put it aside, to just put our weapons down and talk, because everything that we need to be clarified by the highest spirits we can reach is now in our hands. We need to get this kind of a talent. And Allan Kardec said, I don't need to be your enemy just because you think in a different way.
Mm-hmm.
We need to talk. We need to, to converse, to find a way out of this, circle of anger and competition. And as I told you, the person didn't want to believe that I was not being a bigot or a dogmatic guy. She wanted me to be one, and I wasn't. And let's sit and talk. And that's why Allan Kardec, we started here with this message Allan Kardec had sent through a medium in France, saying, he said, I see your room, Anna Blackwell, as a connection between America and France. And because people sit here and talk. And that's what we need to do.
Yeah.
And because at the end of the sentence, he said that these theories will merge. Because when we search for the truth honestly, truth will come.
Yes.
And that's the search, the Spiritist search.
Yes, thank you, Luis Sergio. So, dear friends, we're here. We have much to learn together, and not forgetting that it's not enough to know it. It's necessary to feel it too. So, thank you so much, and until next time.